Welcome to the ClashCast podcast. I'm Colton Cruz.
I am Wyatt Garland.
Brianna Marshall.
Welcome to the podcast where we analyze and talk about anime.
And punch things with our mouths.
Today's topic, anime versus manga.
The classic struggle. The debate to end all debates. The debate that needs to be had by any channel with our sort of esteem.
Yeah.
The primordial rage.
Yes, exactly. And, we've all got lots of things to say about this, obviously. But I feel like we could actually have a real discussion about it now. I remember being very polarized by this debate when I was younger. I remember talking to my brother's girlfriend, and she was talking about Naruto. Like, oh, you like Naruto? I'm like, oh, yeah, I love Naruto. And she's like, well, I'm at this part in the anime, but it's so hard to keep up. And I'm like, just read the manga. What do you have time? What do you just not have time? Like, I was so like... There's an obvious answer, right? You want the content. It's all about gorging yourself, right?
Yeah.
Well, especially back then. I mean, what was it like? Yeah, to watch Naruto, as a continuous story, you have to tune in every day at a certain time on a television channel that came on, very close to when you got out of school, but before your parents got home, because that's the only time, kids can get the TV.
Yeah.
And so it was just really hard to get anime.
It's so pedestrian, right? You have to find your specific way of controlling it. And, it just felt like I never really watched Saturday morning cartoons that much, or felt like there was a space for me to absorb that type of content. Mm-hmm. I don't know, maybe, I don't think it was necessarily a generational thing. I think the generational aspect of it is that we came to a point where we could make a choice.
Yeah.
Like, I could say, oh no, I could wait until Toonami comes on Saturday and once a week watch what I can, or I can just scour online and download a zip file with a bunch of chapters.
Yeah, which to a good point. I mean, if you think of anybody even 5 years older than us, they didn't have that option to just go online and read manga. So I can see where, people would, a lot of people when Dragon Ball first came out, it's that's the only way you can get that.
Yeah. Anybody who's, 2 or 3 years older than me, if I talk to them,
their opportunity to have been able to go online and just read any manga they wanted is diminished.
Yeah, and they were just like, oh yeah, Goku. Like, when I said anime, oh, Goku. Like, remember when we were in the hot tub the other day, and other people from our apartment complex were over there, and the guy must have been close to my age, but then he told his age by saying, because he was like, hey, what's Goku still doing these days, Ooh, and I'm like, oh, well, he's got white hair now, and, and he's like, wow, and he's talking about, he's like, so, I watched it on GT, and I'm like, oh, okay. No, that was his peak, though.
Which is better, Wyatt, the GT manga or the GT anime?
There's no GT manga.
Exactly.
Trick question.
Not worth getting the manga.
Exactly. It was just, a cash grab.
It was filler garbage.
Yeah.
There were some punches in it, but...
I feel like garbage.
Yeah. There was, they just made up a lot of bullshit attacks. I remember watching some of the tail end of it on Toonami. They were fighting, the demons of the
They
Dragon
fight evil
Stars.
Dragon Balls.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
basically. And then Goku's a kid. It's really bad.
It's fillers. Honestly.
Speaking of Dragon Ball, that's a good manga versus anime, kind of example. So, my experience was Dragon Ball was on TV, or Dragon Ball Z was on TV, and I didn't have cable as a kid, so I saw maybe a part of an episode, every couple of seasons.
When it was on.
Yeah, so, to me, when I became an anime fan and a manga fan, and then I went and read Dragon Ball kind of as, an aged, oldie. And I read the manga, and then I went and tried to watch some of the anime, and it's crazy, because I can't watch the anime. Everything, they make fun of, Dragon Ball 4 of, people yelling for episodes and stuff. In the manga, I mean, it is, he yells and then does the thing, and then the fight's over,
That's a panel.
A lot of fights are... half of a chapter. Piccolo and Frieza in the Frieza arc, they fight in half a chapter. Tien does his, 10 Kihohos on Cell in 2 pages.
Okay.
And that's 2 episodes of the anime. And it's
it's a pacing thing.
Yeah, it's pacing. But the thing is, I would say there are, things in the Dragon Ball anime, before Z, where they have the martial arts tournaments, and kind of the really slow pacing kind of makes it for me.
Oh, yeah.
Where I'm like, yeah, like they're drawing up the drama and the tension of like,
Krillin not having a nose.
Well, like Tao Pai Pai like charging up and attacking. It's like, no, it's kind of scary to see like that in this context because it's so bad. It's kind of like a Fist of the North Star thing.
Right.
Like, the old version is kind of really good because it's kind of slow and clunky. Right. It makes you really build on the drama of like, oh my god, he's charging an attack. They don't have money to animate it, so we're just gonna like use time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that thing in music where like the most important note in music is the rest. And it's like, no, like you have to have spacing in between. You have to have silence to like appreciate kind of pacing. But yeah. What did you think of the manga versus like the anime? Or have you read it?
I've
well, how much? Yeah.
Let's compare it one step further. So you could read the manga for Dragon Ball Z, you could watch the anime for Dragon Ball Z, or you could watch the abridged Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
which I would say is a legitimate way to consume that content.
So here's the funny thing. I actually started Dragon Ball while watching Dragon Ball Abridged on YouTube.
There you go.
And then I jumped into actually watching it on Toonami or just going online and watching it on YouTube. Because like the thing with me, I have nothing against reading manga. It's just with when I was a kid, I just had so much time throughout the day, like either with school or like with theater or just like all these other like after school activities. Like when I came home, that was the only thing I was on TV, and I'm like, okay, this just came like a
that was
regular.
Your hook.
Yeah, it was just like a regular routine for me. But like when I tried to like. The sad thing was, like, I started the anime first instead of reading it, so then, like, while watching it, and then, like, trying to go back and read it, I'm like, where's the music at? Where's the animation? Where's the color at?
There is a lot of added value in anime.
You need the drama. That's what you feed off of.
It's sad because with manga, like, there's already, like, so much, like, plot and, like, story already ahead, like, with, like, even Dragon Ball right now, I think you were saying, like, Super's.
Yeah, they have like a super manga that's ahead of like where we're at, but it's like also different. It's
so
weird.
It's hard because it's like I want to know what's happening next. Can I go ahead and read all of it on the online with manga, or can I just wait until like the series?
Yeah,
comes
that's
out,
honestly like that like in today's age where we have such easy access to anime with like Hulu, Crunchyroll, Netflix, Verve, like. I know, like, Wyatt and I, like, we did nothing. Like, we were hardcore manga people for a long, long time.
Well, I've always been the kind of person that I bit my tongue in half when I was younger. I don't really have a good sense of taste, right? So when I'm absorbing content, nothing is really sparking up here. I have to eat a lot of it, and then when it's settling in my gut, I'm like, oh, that's how I feel about it. So manga was so addicting because I could read 600 chapters, 200 chapters. I could read this huge amount and then talk about the whole story theme and the whole, oh, it was really good how they set up this story arc and this mini one and this character change and blah, blah, blah. When you can't, like, that's not why you watch a TV show, right? It's to enjoy that.
Yeah, the moment.
That moment, yeah.
And for me, when I'm watching an anime, I'm only like, yes, this segment of this chapter, which alludes to this, you know, because that's what's exciting about me. It's the tick of the clock. I'm like, I know how all these dominoes stack up because I'm looking at how they fall.
You know how you get to like hour 12.
Yes, I am all, and that's all. If I absorb any media, that's how it is. If I'm watching a movie, I'm like, well, the only reason they did that scene is because they're gonna reference a scene in the future. So I'm looking for that payoff. I'm all payoff. If there's no payoff, it's not exciting to me. I'm like, where's the built narrative? Mm-hmm. And I know as an artist and as a comic book artist, I know how, like, yes, drawing is fun, but it's painstaking. Like, so I know, there's no time to draw. If there's a joke panel that somebody drew, not only do I know that joke is important to characterize the character, I also know that it's probably important to the plot too, or they wouldn't have taken the time to draw it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I had such like a fierce attachment to the written and the drawn content. That's why the manga was always so important to me, because I knew how important it was to inspire everything else. And don't get me wrong, I like the animation and a lot of things, and we'll get on to that about how, like, there are definitely a lot of anime that I enjoy way more than their manga counterparts. Yu Yu Hakusho comes to mind. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure comes to mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of things where the anime just excels at every possible turn and blows the manga out of the water. But then you're looking at the manga as sort of being a storyboard, right? Like you're thinking about how it's written. There's certain things like, say, Berserk, where there's never gonna be an anime adaptation.
Yeah, it is the perfect iteration of what it is.
Yeah.
So I think what we're really trying to figure out here is it's not really a debate. It's kind of like, because a lot of people would try to say that. They'll be like, okay, well, anime's clearly better. The manga's clearly better.
Yeah.
Well, it's about the story. So what kind of story are you telling? If you come at it from that angle, if you look at a story and you say, the best way to enjoy this media, I find, is the written way or the visual way because of these elements, that's when you can have an exciting sort of like discussion about a story or about art. I think it's so, I don't know, just lame. I think the thing say one's better or not.
I think the thing is too is like people, they can obtain sources like completely differently. Like what you were saying, you have it easier obtaining it while reading. While with me, it's like I'm a visual person. I have to see like movement and everything.
You want to act it out. You want to feel like you want to identify, and you identify with things that are moving and expressing. Right? You have to infer a lot when you're reading. So if you're not narratively driven, I'm very narratively driven, right? We talked about this. I can make names for anything. I can just invent things. So when I'm reading and some character expresses some visually or, they depict some personality trait, I can immediately impress that on them very strongly. I'm like, oh, they're this kind of character. Right, now I can just ooze on and imagine that. Because when Vegeta would do something jerkish in the manga or something, I would just I'm like, oh, he's that great. It was so inciting for me. And then, if I see in the anime, like, maybe he doesn't do it at the same intensity or less intensity than I imagined it. So I'm like, oh, okay, so that's that definition.
Right, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more room in an anime to have subtleties that you wouldn't have in a
manga.
Yeah.
Or the other way around.
So, like, in an anime, because you have more time, more space, more elements to work with, there are things that you can add and kind of, hone in on that you wouldn't in a manga because it's...
Right.
No, I mean, it's going to take up a quarter of a black and white page.
Right, it's blanker.
There's only so much... Like you were saying with the music, like... No, like, if the music really adds something to a character, like, I mean... I think JoJo would be, like, a really good example of,
yes.
Like, the music adds so much to what's going on that, like... Yeah, no, I mean, the manga literally just doesn't have access to the elements to do that same thing.
Yeah. But I will say, though, it's like... I've said it before with you. It's like, I really don't have time to read manga, or it's like, if I see something or if I start it, I don't want to read it. But the interesting thing is, like, so Sailor Moon and JoJo is, like, my favorite animes in the world. And watching JoJo, it's so interesting to see, like, you still see that, like, manga references, like, the panel.
It's graphic.
Then, like,
graphic.
So it's like, I kind of want to go backwards and read the manga and just, like...
You want to see where the original...
Yeah, because you want to reappreciate kind of, like, what's going on. And that's cool, because, like, it is... Having both mediums does allow you to enjoy kind of the same story two different ways, which is cool. Options are always good. But I think what you like another thing I wanted to pick up on what you were saying is like I know for me some of the time there is just a difference in the way that you experience them. In that when you read manga, you have to be kind of 100% attention on the manga.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, anime is a form of television. You can just kind of have it on and half pay attention and you're picking up.
Yeah,
right. It is less work. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
In a sense. So there are people who are addicted to, creating the music. Like I was saying, like I bubble out the narrative. When I'm reading One Piece, I don't need music because I can't even read the sound effects technically. Like it's just it's exploding. I'm hearing
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, it's just crackling and going on its own way when I see the smoke, because it just lights up your eyes differently. But, animation, you listen. I think that's the most important thing. You listen. And there are people who don't like to listen, and there are people who like to listen. So that's normally what gets favored, there are people who want to sit there and say, no, this is what I feel this story is, and when I read it, it's very naked, so I can put everything I want onto that, and if that's what you want in a story, great. And there are some stories that are open enough, and are, I think that's one of the exciting parts about JoJo's, is it's so crazy that it's a little less naked than some people are used to a manga being. It's so specifically twisted in its way, and it makes the very specific thing. So it achieves this level of hook which is kind of hard to do normally in written content. It's like, let's say in a written book, someone has like an entire paragraph describing one thing. Well, obviously there's a lot of attention to play to that, right? Mm-hmm. So like in a JoJo style chapter, if they explain some fighting technique or explain some... The way they hone in on things is kind of like that, where they choose to make one thing really specific, so it makes people who normally are absorbing this content where they can impress a lot on it, it forces them to have a different experience where they have to listen a little bit. They're like, wait, what's going on? Oh, so this exact thing is, so this is, and then they'll use, and a lot of anime does this, but a lot of manga does this. I'm sorry, that's going to happen a lot. A lot of manga does this where it's very specific about that, where it's like, oh no, this is just like the welterweight fight between these two characters. Like it'll make very specific.
Well, it's the most efficient way to convey that information.
Right.
Whereas an anime has time and elements to
that. To make it sort of like...
To kind of fill that in a little bit. Another thing I would say is, because anime has usually the benefit of coming after manga.
Oh, yeah.
There's also a lot of things where it's
perspective.
There's you can say go read the JoJo manga all you want, but the 2 arcs where he fights the Knights and he fights Jack the Ripper in Phantom Blood are garbage. They suck. It's garbage manga writing. It's terrible.
It's bad.
But in the anime, it even kind of shows. It's kind of like, ooh, these episodes suck.
That's why they kind of skip through it.
But that's the thing. Yeah, an anime has the benefit of. It's the same thing like with Akira. Katsushiro sees the movie as his ultimate iteration of the story.
Right.
He wrote the manga first, but to him, he spent all his time on refining it in the movie, and to him, it's like, no, that's the way I want people to enjoy the story.
Yeah, and I've read chunks of the manga. The entire thing is an illustrative tour de force, obviously, but it is like that where, when you watch the movie Akira, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's basically everything, and you're like, but what about the weird religion plot thing? And I'm like, he covered it.
Yeah, you can.
He did it.
It's like you can go read the manga and learn more, but honestly, you got everything you really need.
Exactly.
And I would say there are things like Akira and like JoJo where like it kind of pulls a little bit of reverse on the manga where you do have to pay attention to JoJo. You do have to pay attention to Akira. They are high attention shows.
Yeah.
Compared to something like very typical shonen like Dragon Ball or One Piece. It's like, no, you have been habituated to know that most of the episode really doesn't need to stick to you. And so they're easy to, but I would say something that draws in White and I to JoJo is that it's like, oh no, there's a lot here. There's a lot for us to really dive into.
I remember and that's it's got so many hooks, and that spells out to the anime too. And I feel like the reason that we're bigger fans of the JoJo as an animation, I mean, we've said what we want to say about the art. It does get a lot better, but even when it does get better, it is its own brand of art. So it's a little bit hard to digest sometimes.
Nothing can be JoJo.
So we can understand it, but I think it was, what is it? Diamond is Unbreakable. We're getting towards the end of the season, and we're like, oh, okay, we've kind of in our brains established. We checked all the boxes, that's the main villain. We've got this many episode episodes left, approximately.
Yeah,
so
it was starting to fall into a little bit of that shonen drive.
And then, oh my god, it just hits you with this hook. I mean, I will never forget, we both screamed. We're like, I have no idea. Now I just flip the table. Who cares? I'll rewrite it all. And that's what makes that beautiful. Because from an animation standpoint, it's very much like, wow, because it's already all played out. Now, if you're reading that in the manga, it's like, all right, so is he just literally making this up? You don't have a lot of faith. But when it's like, oh no, we've hired an entire production team to create it. It's like, okay, they're going for this.
Yeah.
So when Ghost Dad flips his way onto the page, it's
what the?
It's all right, not only this wasn't a thing where it's I guess if he does something bad, they'll just end it. It's no, they're going all in on Ghost Dad. They paid animators, they paid colorists, they paid sound designers.
Yeah, it's the
investment. To follow through on this idea.
And that's the exciting part, because you get to write. You get to write a better story when you animate it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. A lot of people had their impressions of the first source material, so when they see a different impression of it, they get a little flustered at it. One of my favorite sort of disconnects, what I'll never sort of understand is people have all their interpretations about Dragon Ball Z, right? Mm-hmm. But what they never really seem to really take to heart is fundamentally Akira Toriyama has always been, and is always going to be, a joke artist. He's a comedian. Like, that's what he's...
Dragon Ball is a gag.
It's a gag. The whole thing is a spoof on Journey to the West or whatever. Like, you know, and he did Dr. Slump before that. All of the characters in Dragon Ball Z, even when he turns up the seriousness, they're all jokes. Yes, Vegeta sounds like vegetable on purpose.
Right.
Ibbity bobbity boo. Come on, he's not pulling any punches here. But when they started animating it, they realized, wait a minute, we need to up the tension a little bit.
There's a good, like, in Dragon Ball, like, the original, like, you know, him as a kid, like, they kind of, like, catch on to this is a martial arts thing.
Yeah, it's heavier than that.
And then by Z, it's like, this is like a battle thing.
Right. So then they do the screaming for a couple episodes on purpose. They lengthen out the episodes on purpose to make it a little bit more tension driven. So then you are like, oh my god, like what? Like it's a little bit different in the manga. He just kind of wants you to get to the next character he made up. That's also a joke. So it's a little bit different. And it just, but that's the thing, they get to write a different story with the same material.
Right. I mean, because if you think of even the way manga is produced, I mean, it's as close to a stream of consciousness week by week by a single artist as you can get.
Yeah.
Like, there is not a lot of refining layers. Like, they have meetings with their editors. They have, like, some story, like, you know, like, plotting ahead of time. But a lot of it is kind of just a, like, moment to moment. Like, I have to just know pacing. I have to know, like, character interaction. And it's coming out. And then, you know, when they go to make an anime, it's like, oh, okay, let's breathe.
Yes.
Interesting when you flip it around the other way where you have, you know, something where an anime came first and a manga came second. I would say almost 100% of the time I like the anime. So, like, I mean, normally it doesn't work in a way that you would think. So, like, Gurren Lagann was obviously an anime first, and it's an absolute masterpiece.
Right.
And it was from the start. They make a spin-off manga for it. It's trash. It's garbage.
Yeah.
Like, I have no interest in ever reading it because kind of in the way that, like, Berserk we say is like, no, I mean, Berserk as a manga is the ultimate form of that piece of art.
Right.
Gurren Lagann is the old, like, the anime, the original anime. I mean, they even do, like, a re-animation of it later where they try and make it more risque and, like, violent.
Really?
Yeah, and it's, like, it's just really interesting because it's like, no, I mean, you're not going to beat the original. Like,
it's true.
Yeah.
It says something. Even with those, even with those different director episodes, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Ooh,
So we've all got our own things. But, what is it? There was some that we were talking about where,
Fully Cooley, same kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, you can't I have read the manga Fully Cooley.
It doesn't work.
The impact is completely different.
Kill, like,
yeah.
I was about to say, too, did they ever even make a manga
I'm sure they've spun off some kind of manga.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's like selling... you know, you go see Black Panther and you could also buy a Black Panther toy. It's like, at that point, it's you don't buy the Black Panther toy to get the full story experience out of it. Whereas I feel like the manga, a lot of times it's like, oh, you really like Gurren Lagann, here's something you could buy.
Yeah, another little polished thing. So let's think of I think one of the biggest sort of differences, because there are sometimes clear winners where certain stories lend themselves better to a certain medium. And I gotta admit, you know, as much as we're trying to say it's about the abstraction of the story, it's about how you want to digest the material, it's about how you best like to hear a story.
Yeah, like how you like to best be entertained.
Exactly. Everyone has their thing, but there are a couple ones where if you want to warn, because sometimes, like, I am always famously furious at you because you don't like Zatch Bell.
Yeah,
but I understand because you read the manga first, and he does not know how to draw for the first couple of chapters.
He knew how to draw, and he spent 10 chapters in a bank.
Yeah, he did spend, and it's like, okay, I'm a very forgiving person because I have that unique art perspective about, like, oh no, the fact that he even drew 10 chapters to me is still incredible. So, like, yeah, I'm keep going there, but he gets so good. Oh, so there are certain things where, like, oh no, you would have been better off starting on the anime because then you would have not had a negative experience.
Right.
And negative experiences can then shape you for, you know, forever. And then you never sort of...
No, I mean, the same exact story could be said about Hunter x Hunter.
Ooh.
The 2011...
Well, I was going to say Yu Yu Hakusho, but yeah, the same idea.
Yeah, the 2011 anime is a masterpiece, and it's a long masterpiece. And I'm not saying it's like a 26 episode, like, oh, they really like refined it, made it good. It's like No, it is a like 65 or 95 episode like just great telling of the story. And the manga, I mean, it's the same guy who draws Yu Yu Hakusho.
I'll go Yu Yu Hakusho.
He sucks. He sucks at drawing. I remember trying to read the manga. I didn't get past the first chapter because the art was just garbage.
That's bad.
I watched all of the 2011 anime and I was like, this is a really good story. I went back and I read the whole manga, forgiving the art because I wanted to just blow through the story and get past where the anime ends. And it was like, okay, this is an interesting conundrum here because the artist is only going to do so much. The anime came out and was able to just pull those diamonds out of the rough. But the manga does have something to it.
It does, but it also then has those chapters where he'll just draw stick figures because he doesn't give a shit. He is not an illustrator.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the guy. He's not.
He has a hard time holding his job as a manga artist.
He doesn't, and I get that because it's fucking hard. Like some people are not. I mean, One Piece. You cannot read a single page of One Piece. I don't care what from the start. Oda just has an explosive, illustrative character.
He's
powerful. He's just
yeah.
like, bam. And you're like, okay, you want to look at his panels. Who's the guy that does Yu Yu Hakusho? He married the Sailor Moon girl.
I don't remember his name off the top of my head.
A very famous man. But the point is, if you ever want to blow through anything, Yu Yu Hakusho is about the same way where it is, I mean...
The art's bad, but you do get to read the same arc twice.
Yes, it's true. He does...
Just get it to sink in there.
He has a very explosive gestural quality. I will say that of him.
It's bad.
He wrote it, goddammit. Like, he's a storyboard artist.
Kind of. I mean, he gave up so many times. I'm going to stop bagging him.
And it's okay, back on him all you want, but like the way that I explain it from an American comic book standpoint, he's a penciler. He's not an inker.
Yeah, penciler is the word.
He is not an inker. Like, and that's he had a good story. He wrote it down, and the anime Yu Yu Hakusho, that was during some like Renaissance peak era of animation.
Yeah.
They just they threw the goddamn horse at the thing. It's beautiful in a very old, like,
It's classic.
I think Yu Yu Hakusho is probably my favorite classic anime out there. Absolutely.
The fight between Brie and Hiei, man, like, oh my god, with the black dragon.
Yeah.
That animation in and of itself, like, when they pick up like, there are scenes in there where I'm like, wow, this is animated to the nines. To the nines, and it's so crazy to think that this is. You look at that chapter, and you're like, wow.
The chapter is garbage. You even look at it kind of, in a dated context now. It's like, oh, that art, like, that animation is a little old, but like, it is really beautiful for the time.
They had
spectacular.
This amazing expressive energy. Nothing. Dragon Ball Z communicates energetic force. Yu Yu Hakusho communicates this sort of like.
This like pressural energy.
Yeah, it feels more like energy. Dragon Ball Z feels like the characters are literally physically getting bigger, and Yu Yu Hakusho feels like they're twisting and they are the wind. There's a lot of really cool experimental sort of like color fields and things.
Because it's drawn, so they can just, they can go off the reservation when they want to.
Yeah, because they didn't have to do much on the anatomy, because they knew they were like, just
in bags.
Like, it's fine.
Yeah, an interesting kind of like modern parallel to that is Attack on Titan.
I was about to say, it's like, especially like nowadays, because I remember I started Attack on Titan.
What was your first impression of that?
I
always want to hear people's first impression. Because as an artist, oh boy.
Here's the thing. With anime, it's like, you're either going to get one thing. You can get some crazy shit, some like sad or like feel shit, or just tentacles, whatever. But like with Attack on Titan, I was not expecting a lick of what was going on. And so like...
It's a roller coaster ride,
so
for sure.
It was just full of emotions and whatnot. And first off, like, freaking the way the Titans were drawn, I'm like, I'm not okay with it. Season 2, that's a different story. Woo! But like, just the way the Titans were, it's like, there's this whole like world where it's like, humanity's kind of falling, like these Titans are like kind of up and destroying them.
They're big humans.
Yes, and I watched the entire season, I'm like, man, this is fucking good. But then like someone was saying, oh, you should read the manga. Open the book, burn it. Like,
that's the thing. Like they took they took a manga that was penciled. Like, oh my! I would say that is at best.
I mean, the thing I like about Yu Yu Hakusho is that you can tell that manga artist, he doesn't try. Well, he's like, I don't care.
There's that thing where it's clearly like, he was depressed that day, or like he was between jobs, but like. Attack on Titan, it gets made into a glistening gem of an anime. It gets every, new animation techniques, CGI parallax with like layers of like inking on top of it, and they just mesh the story. It's got and the thing is, all of that animation works with the tone of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very militaristic. It's like, oh, we've got
Yes.
perfect straight lines, perfect movement, perfect anatomy, perfect structure. But the manga just doesn't have
That's the
any
thing
of
that I
that.
understand. It's like,
but like,
how
it's
can you
the
come from
original
this to that?
story.
Yeah.
It's so
It's
funny.
the most inspiring shit I've ever seen.
Yeah, if that manga can make it into being that
Like,
anime,
The most beautifully animated, like, piece
anime of
of
2015.
I will say, that is a touchstone as far as animation goes. We all remember that first season
Yeah.
when it came out. We were like, "Wow,
It's
Funimation!"
breathtaking, but
Yep.
man, that manga, if he can do it. But that's the thing, a ton of people, the anime made the mistake. The huge disadvantage anime has is they have to be made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they didn't make that second season. And everybody who was hardcore on Attack on Titan, they wouldn't read that manga.
Yeah,
Like, that's how that survived in the cosplay community for those 3 years.
And it
like,
still is to this day.
And it
Like,
still
I remember
is.
still going, and there's so many people in the cosplay
what is it?
community.
Maid Levy.
Oh yeah.
Remember you know how big that is. You know how giant that is. That wouldn't have been a thing without the manga being
It's
there
true.
Yeah.
to
It's
stand as a
true.
bastion for like source material.
Because
Like,
that is the best costume because it's an alternative costume. It's great. And I love it. I love it that it was said of the manga artist. They told him he couldn't draw it. That's
he
why
sucks.
they told him he's like, no, you can't draw. You can't draw well enough to do a story. And you know what he did? And you know what is so amazing about the manga and the source material of Attack on Titan is he did it anyway, but he knew that he didn't have illustrative strength. So he dumped it all into emotion.
Yeah.
Like, the anatomy's bad.
he
like,
told, at the end of the day, he told his story.
he told, and he like, okay, well, if I can't draw, I'm going to take what I feel and just depict that somehow. And the crazy, I have never seen fear, anxiety, criminal joy. Like, there's so many things in there, feelings and faces depicted in such an expressive way, and you're just completely blown away by it. Like, because it's this horribly depicted world.
Yeah.
No offense. Okay, I couldn't draw half that stuff, but it's like, and then there's some gold, there's definitely some diamonds
There's
in there.
diamonds in there.
There's
Yeah.
diamonds in there. And I mean, like, part of the Titan's design comes from how bad he was. He couldn't
Yeah.
draw anatomy, so he just wing it, and that gave the Titans their unique creepiness.
Made them extra bad. looking.
Exactly.
You know what the sad thing is? When I first saw the anime, and I was just like, man, this is brilliant. Man, the Titans are, whoever designed this is great. But then looking at the manga, I'm just like, ooh.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah, in the
say
manga, they're all
I'm just like, ooh, wait a second.
It's so funny that the brilliant twist of horror that runs through that series, which leads to its success, comes from his inability to draw.
There it is.
It's
I mean,
hilarious.
like, and on the flip side, I mean, that happens with story too. If you look at like Keijo, the butt fighting anime.
Yeah.
The anime's hilarious and great, but they literally made the writers stop writing it because they were like, the anime we did such a good job with, but in your manga, like, they're 16 and they start in high school, and you have guys wrestling them, and they're like, and you're like, the source material was ruining the masterpiece at that point, and like, it's just so interesting that like there's so much give and take, and it's so complicated
Right.
between manga versus anime.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the most polarizing angle right now, at least in recent times, is the modern adaptation of Berserk. And
Well, because they've had 3 swings at it.
yeah, and I mean, I think, what is it? There's a lot of YouTubers who rightfully have their opinions, and we've done a video, check it out, about our personal opinions. We've also done a podcast about Berserk,
Yeah.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which I think we make a really fair point into looking into what its strengths are, but that is just, I think, I mean, you would have to spend more money than has ever been spent on animation. I mean, maybe if you go back to the 80s, back when it was you ever seen Vampire Hunter D?
Yeah.
And there is, what is it, Bloodlust is one of the movies they made. That movie took 10 years. So,
Same thing with Akira. Akira
Yeah.
took him years of
Yeah.
the artist working himself on the art. Like,
and it's
and he's not even going to finish Berserk, so...
yeah, exactly. We're all, I mean, I believe in Oda's ability to finish One Piece.
He's an immortal god.
yeah,
I assume he is some kind of Time Lord or something who travels from body to body every lifetime.
He just takes like steroids and puts them right into his wrist. But that is the tragedy and the beauty of Berserk. That manga is too good. I have.
Right, I would say it is the one that is it is one of the few that is definitively the manga is going to be better than any anime that comes out.
Any animation that you can animate that. I remember. I remember because we talked about it. We just talked about how Attack on Titan strove through with its emotion. There are things that one even questions if they should be depicted in Berserk. You get a little frightened.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's a lot. I mean, we talk about it in the Berserk review. I don't want to go into it. Go check out the Berserk review, guys.
Yeah, but there's some stuff there. I remember showing it to a friend of mine, and they're like, what's going on through their heads? And it's like, well, their commitment is there. So we can't expect the same thing to happen, like on the other side. You're never going to get an animation that's going to capture that.
They're different experiences, for sure.
Exactly.
So let us know, guys, in the comments, what is a manga that you think is better than the anime and anime that is better than the manga?
Right, yeah.
And why? Let's be real here. On what merit do we think that... Because, I don't want... There's...
Because there are cases where it happens, but there's a lot of variability between the viewer on it.
Yeah, and why do you like your, flavor of the story? What is it about that grabs your personality perfectly?
All right, guys, that's a KO.